Hi, I'm Brandi Lytle, founder of Not So Mommy and creator of the Olive Green Childless Not by Choice Awareness Ribbon. In partnership with Tutum Global, we are owning our voice during National Infertility Awareness Week 2021. In this special Tutum Talks series, we will speak with experts who unpack topics that are important to people who are involuntarily childless. Today, we are talking with April Christina. April is a health, wellness, and beauty blogger with a Bachelor of Science in Clinical Laboratory Science with a focus in psychology. After being diagnosed with endometriosis in 2010, she founded EndoNMe in 2015 as an outlet for people to understand her story with endometriosis, and more importantly, for women to know that they are not alone. It was from EndoNMe that she decided to build her new platform, I'm April Christina. April realized that she is a woman first. She understands that women need awareness about endometriosis and other autoimmune diseases. She also acknowledges that people everywhere should have access to information that can make them the healthiest person they can be, mind, body, and soul. Welcome, April.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you so much for being here. Before we get started with today's topic, would you briefly tell us about your endo journey?
Yes. So I started my menstrual cycle when I was 9 years old. I was an adolescent, not really understanding what a period is, how to use sanitary pads, just everything as it pertains to a menstrual cycle. I was completely confused about because I wasn't thinking about that, right? Like I wanted to be a part of school activities. I wanted to have friends, but my life just had a different way of catching up to me, to say the least. I dealt with really bad, heavy periods, bad cramping, nauseous, vomiting, the whole 9 yards, the whole entire time from 9 until I was a teenager. When I was 14 years old, I went to see a pediatric gynecologist. Then they put me on birth control pills. I wasn't sexually active, but they wanted to control the menstrual bleeding as well as all of the various symptoms that I had. When I got into my 20s, I had really, really bad leg pain. So the doctors kept checking me for blood clots, making sure I don't have any pulmonary embolisms. Thankfully, all of that came back negative, but I still found it very hard to be able to drive, to be able to walk. The nausea did not subside, and I knew that something else had to be going on. So I ended up speaking to someone that ended up being an OBGYN, and I was explaining everything to her. And in my late 20s, she was like, oh, you have endometriosis. So at this time, I had never heard of it before. I didn't know how to spell it. I didn't know that this condition even existed. And I underwent my first surgery where I was officially diagnosed with endometriosis. It was stage 3 at the time. And then 11 months later, I ended up having a 7-hour surgery because my endometriosis had returned. And at that time, it was stage 4 endometriosis. So after that time, I really started understanding how serious this condition was. And I just wanted to spread awareness, one, but even before that, because I didn't know much about it, I wanted to find other people within the community that was like me, because I felt so isolated and alone and secluded. And I wanted to be able to find friends that had endometriosis just so that I can hear their journey, they can hear mine, and just give me pointers and tips and tricks on, how to basically get through every day. Like, how do they make it? Like, how do they, continue to have friendships outside of our community? And that's how my social media platform and my blog was formed.
Thank you so much for sharing that story. I know I'm an endo warrior as well. I wasn't diagnosed until my late 20s either. I know on average it takes 10 years for someone to be diagnosed correctly. It's incredible.
Yeah.
Well,
and that was a thing that really got to me, because I'm like, it takes 8 to 10 years. And I was 9 all the way into my late 20s. And I was like, is the norm? Is this what other people are experiencing? I just wanted to find answers.
Absolutely. That's what's so hard when a doctor asks you, are your periods normal? Well, it's normal for me. It's the way it's always been.
Like, this is what it is. So I categorize it as normal, but then I found out that
Exactly.
it wasn't normal.
Yeah, in fact, it is not.
Right.
Well, April, you assert that you decided to turn your pain into passion and your passion into purpose by educating
Yeah.
others about their health. And education fits perfectly with this year's National Infertility Awareness theme, What I Want You to Know. So, what would you like others to know about living with endometriosis?
It is a journey. And sometimes a journey can be tough. Sometimes a journey can be amazing. I never expected my life to be how it is now as it pertains to being an advocate and, talking about it as much as I have. But I am truly grateful because I suffered from depression when I first started on my journey with endometriosis because I was extremely sad. I didn't really want to talk. I cried a lot. And I realized that that wasn't the life that I wanted to continue to have for myself. So within this, because, it was so painful all of those years, I became very passionate about really finding other people. And then more importantly, connecting other people with others in the community so that they didn't have to experience what I was going through. Or if they was experiencing it, that they know that there's light at the end of the tunnel. And when I realized that there was an actual need for people to feel not only not alone, one, but also a part of a community, I really started owning in on it becoming a purpose of my life, mainly because having any chronic condition, especially with endometriosis, you don't physically see what a person is going through, right? Like they tell you how they're feeling. And unless you have another chronic condition, sometimes it is difficult to really relate and understand what was going on. So I just wanted to make sure that people just didn't feel alone, number one. And then once I started becoming a little better with my journey emotionally as it pertains to endometriosis, it just was a no-brainer for me to continue out this purpose-driven life, to continue to advocate for others, and more importantly, to allow people to understand that, if something doesn't go right with one doctor, you can go and get a second opinion. And more importantly, with endometriosis and there being so many different symptoms, every single individual is not going to be the same. So what I experienced with my leg pain and being nauseous and vomiting, somebody else may not experience. They may have back pain, or, they may have uncontrollable bleeding for the whole entire time that they're on their cycle. And what does that look like? And to not be ashamed of your journey. So those were like all of the main reasons why I decided to keep pushing and to continue to move forward within my advocacy journey, because I never wanted anyone else to feel like how I felt.
Absolutely. And you bring up a very good point that endometriosis, it is difficult because the symptoms do manifest in different ways with different
Yeah.
people. And when you told us about your endo journey, you talked about some of your symptoms. You mentioned some more symptoms as you discussed what you want people to know. Yes, for me, it's not only leg pain, but back pain as well. And then endo belly. I really suffer with endo belly a lot. So,
Yeah.
could you tell us just a few more symptoms that people may want to look out for and consider if they're thinking that they might have endometriosis or they may have some type of chronic illness, even
Absolutely.
adenomyosis or PCOS?
Absolutely. So you mentioned the endo belly. We call that endo flares for short. And that's pretty much when your abdominal wall gets distended and you unfortunately look like you're pregnant. And sometimes it can last for a few hours. Sometimes for me, it's lasted for days. And, it's very frustrating because it's very painful. On top of excessive bleeding, you can have lower back pain, as you had mentioned, headaches, um, There was someone else that I know, actually a few people, their endometriosis had actually traveled to their lungs. So they had difficulty breathing. Anywhere you could have bowel endo, I had that as well. My endometriosis had actually spread to my bowels. You can deal with constipation. You can have difficulty even having a bowel movement. It may not be as frequent because endometriosis, it goes outside of the uterus and it actually spreads to other parts of the body. Where your endometriosis actually lays determines, unfortunately, where you have your symptoms. So it's totally a full body disease, unfortunately. But once they're able to target specifically the root of where you have most of your endo, that's where they're able to really target and really focus on the symptoms that is related specifically to you.
I think that's one reason why it's so difficult to diagnose. For example, you mentioned it being around your bowel, and doctors will think perhaps you have IBS when
Yes.
in fact it's endometriosis.
That's very
Um,
true.
you also mentioned connecting with people, and I wondered if you would mention a few resources or communities that you know about that help connect endo warriors.
Yes. So actually, back in 2019, I started the Endo Brunch. Unfortunately, the pandemic happened, so we have not been able to meet in person, but it is a brunch that's created for women with endometriosis or any other chronic condition, as well as their supporters and spouse to family members. They're all welcome to come, and we really just come together and we unite over food and we share resources, as well as me having speakers there. And the reason why I did that is because social media is an amazing thing. And most of my friends that's in the endo community, I met through social media. But I do know for me, when I first started out on my journey, I was looking for those tangible people that I could physically reach in person and touch and be like, oh my gosh, like you're actually real. So I created that, and that'll be happening next year in April. Also, when later on in my journey, I met up with the Endo Warriors. They have support groups all over as well as virtual. My co-host for the VDOT podcast, Lauren, she created Endo Black, and that's created for women of color. And it's been absolutely amazing being a part of that. So between all of those, also Endo What has documentaries that help nurses that are in the school system, as well as for people to be more educated. And before the pandemic, they had also created different series where we can come together and have dialogue and discuss what's really happening and going on within endometriosis and ways that, we can be better. Also on social media, the Endo Co, they've been really helpful with their community as well.
Thank you for all those incredible resources, and thank you for sharing your expertise with us. Would you let people know how they can connect with you?
Sure. So I am on all social media platforms as I'm April Christina, the letter I, the letter M. April Christina, it's all one word. My blog is I'mAprilChristina.com. And if you guys are interested in anything with women's reproductive health, me and my two other endo warriors from the endometriosis community started the VDOT podcast, which is on Spotify, Anchor, and iTunes.
Wonderful. Well, again, thank you so much for chatting with us today, and thank you for watching. You can listen to more Tutum Talks at the Childless Women Network YouTube channel.